Hello class, today we are going to be looking at the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. This video segment will cover amendments 1 through 5. We had already previously looked at the first 3 amendments, so I'm going to breeze through those relatively quickly. The First Amendment right is the rights and freedoms. You will recall the freedom of religion, which we had discussed, is broken up between the exercise or practice of the religion and a law that refers to the entire religion. So this would be like trying to limit your prayer, and this would be a law that affects all Catholics or something to that effect. The freedom of speech, remember we discussed that this is allows you to criticize those in power, but it does not give you the right to lie or to insult or to incite violence or panic, things like that. The main purpose of this is that you should be able to criticize those of our elected leaders and our bosses without fear of reprisal. The freedom of the press is how the government how the people are given accurate information about what's going on in the government and what's going on in society. Without freedom of the press, we may be in the dark about some things. So for example, North Korea does not have freedom of the press. Right now they have reported 0 coronavirus cases, which is physically impossible when you're surrounded by Japan, China, and South Korea, which have tens of thousands of coronavirus cases. So because of lack of freedom of the press, we don't know what's going on there. The right to peaceably assemble, get together with your friends, something where you are allowed to protest or to march, things along that line. And of course, once again, no violence. And of course, the right to petition is to gather signatures for a cause. We had also discussed the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. Now, when thinking about the Second Amendment, we're talking about your hunting rifles, your pistols. The popular one in the last decade, of course, has been the AR-15. What we try to balance with the Second Amendment is the difference between well-regulated, having good rules in place about how and what is allowed, versus not infringing, not taking it away or not taking away our right to bear arms. So the argument isn't whether the Second Amendment should exist. The argument is between how regulated it should be versus whether or not it's being infringed. Okay? The Third Amendment we briefly talked about, that's the one where the soldiers can't take your house. This will not really affect us in our lifetime, but it was a problem back in the Revolutionary War era when the Constitution was being written. The amendments 4 through 8 are going to be law and order amendments. These amendments will cover things like cops and courts and what to do when you're arrested, what happens to you, what rights you have when you're in trouble with the law. All right? The first part about the Fourth Amendment is the search and seize. Fourth Amendment is known as the Search and Seizure Amendment. This is the one that states rules for when the police can search you and when they can take things from you. Typically, the police cannot search you or your property without having one of these 2 things. First, a search warrant issued by a court-ordered judge that usually will state when, where, why you are being searched. The other thing that the cop can have is probable cause. If they think a crime is being committed real time, then they are able to step in and stop that crime from happening. So if they pull you over and they smell weed in your car, they can search your car for weed. If they're walking by a house and they think a murder is being committed inside the living room, they can rush into the house to stop the murder. All right. The Fifth Amendment, the last one we're going to cover in this short segment, is the most complicated of the first 4 amendments that we have looked at. Now, one thing to help you out with the Fifth Amendment is there are 5 parts to the Fifth Amendment. So 5 for 5 makes it a little bit easier to remember. Another thing you might hear about the Fifth Amendment is the phrase, plead the Fifth. All right. You have to be charged with a crime. They can't put you in jail without charging you with a crime. It's called the right of habeas corpus. And if you commit a very, very bad crime, you have a jury. So this is for murders and rapes, etc. You cannot be charged with the same crime twice. So you can't be charged with the same murder over and over and over again until the government finds you guilty. This is called double jeopardy. Now, this does not mean that you can get a speeding ticket. That means you can never get another speeding ticket. It's talking about a specific crime on a specific date versus a specific person, things like that. Now, a new case can be brought if there is new evidence. So with the rash of DNA evidence, we have had a lot of cases reopened when DNA evidence either proved or didn't prove that someone had been guilty or innocent. All right, when you are in court, you have the opportunity to plead the Fifth if you are on the stand. This means you do not have to answer questions that you think will make you seem guilty. Now, you can make the argument that by refusing to answer the question, it makes you look guilty, but the point here is that you don't have to tell on yourself. You don't have to put your hand on the Bible, or raise your right hand and say, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and then have somebody simply ask you, did you do this or not? It's up to the other side to prove that you're guilty or innocent, with evidence and witnesses. All right, the government will not be able to take away your life, liberty, or process unless it is part of court order or the due process of law. So yes, they can impound your car if you get a DUI. Yes, they can take some of your property if you owe money to something. But it has to be something that comes through the courts. It can't just be a government decision, the judge decides to take your house. It has to go through the court. It has to be something that's done with the due process of law. Finally, the government sometimes does need to take public land from people. Think about like they're expanding a highway from 2 lanes to 4 lanes and they have to take a sliver of everybody's front yard along that highway. If the government is going to take a part of your property and you've done nothing wrong, the government has to compensate you if they're going to take part of your property for public use. I will add the video for amendments 6 through 10, and these will be found on my Haiku page. Hopefully this is just a way for you to be able to review them. The slides presentation will also be on the Haiku page if you want to go slow and take your notes and think about them each individually. Thank you guys, hope to see you soon.